Hello and welcome again to the training with regards to the GPS tracking portal. As we would have done in the first part of the training, I would have explained to you the basic functionalities of the menus, what information is contained in terms of changing map view, map controls. Now we're going to move on to the second part of the training where on the left side it indicates the vehicles under your control or command, and it's identified by the make model, its battery voltage, in some cases signal strength, ignition status, last reported time, activity for the day, and its current status. As you can see on your map, there are three primary status you will see. You can have them idling with the engine on, as in this case where it's actually orange. You can have them in motion where you can see it in green, or you can have them parked as you can see in this particular instance where it's black and gray. So again, just to explain in depth what every bit of this detail mean, I'm just going to pull another screen up here. And the trip or the vehicle information box gives you information in relation to the vehicle. Alright, so in this case it identifies the type of vehicle it is, whether it's a truck, a car, a pickup, or hauler, something of the sort, is identified by the vehicle registration number, make and model, its current status, and as I indicated again, there are three statuses that can be seen primarily. You can see it parked with the ignition off, which you just saw as black and gray, or it can be stopped idling with the ignition on, as in this particular instance, as you can see, it's in orange diamond, or it could be in motion, which is indicated by a numerical value, and it shows here in green. In the second layer, you have, in some instances, you'll be able to see vehicle signal strength, vehicle battery voltage, and its GSM signal strength, which can be zero in some cases based on the areas you're operating. In the third layer, it indicates the ignition status. In this particular case, the ignition is on, as you can see here, ignition on. It's identified by a green lock, which is green, unlocked, or when the ignition is turned off, it's a lock that turns black with actual lock. They have the GPS reported time and the communication time with the servers in the first one, last reported time, and last GPS time as well. It's last reported location, and in this particular instance, this is a reference location. As you can see, Bashgram Public Works Sandpit and GFS coordinates. So on the mapping, you can actually create virtual boundaries or locations or zones that is referred to as points of interest or geofences. These are basically areas you can easily identify whenever a vehicle traverses through a particular zone, stops at a particular area. You can be notified of these occurrences once these events occur, whether they exit, whether they enter a particular zone. Like for instance, you may want to be notified every time a vehicle enters or leaves a sandpit. So you can actually get a notification by creating a virtual boundary or pure point of interest on the mapping system, and you can get those alerts once it's properly set up. So you commonly hear me referring to many times reference locations or non-reference locations. In this particular case, the vehicle was at a reference location. That's so you could have actually seen the name showing up here. The distance indicated would have indicated here in this particular instance, 608 km, indicates the duration of the vehicle. The distance of the vehicle is what is driven since the GPS was installed, and the ignition on time since the GPS was installed, 30 hours. Then you have some activity here in relation for today. It shows here the actual driving time for the particular day was 9 hours and 33 minutes. Then it was idling for 3 hours and 35 minutes, stopped for 3 hours and 56 minutes. The distance traveled for this particular day is 311 km. The time the vehicle started movement for the day, in this case it was working through the evening, so that's why you would see that midnight, so it was crossed over for one day Tornado. If for any reason the vehicle started moving at 7:58 in the morning, you would have actually seen it here as well too. So this is just a trip detail box that indicates or explains the particular detail in relation to the trip detail for the vehicle. Now there are two ways in which to identify You can basically search for vehicles. If for any reason that you're logged in to the system and you cannot see a particular vehicle that you're searching for, you can either traverse or scroll down this vehicle listing here and identify the vehicle, or you can simply type in the registration number in here and the vehicle will automatically populate. Now, to identify your vehicle current location, you simply scroll to which vehicle you want to find. In this particular instance, I'm going to look for this vehicle GH6774. Just by simply clicking in the middle here, it actually brings the vehicle into view on the map where it's exactly located. As you can see, it's over on the west coast at this time. Now, there are two particular ways in terms of viewing the trips data for this system. There's one way to view the vehicle information for the last 24 hours, last trips data for the 24 hours, and there's another way to review historical data beyond 36 hours, a month away, 6 months away, 1 year away, 3 weeks away. There's another method for that. So in terms of the trips data, I'm just going to explain something to you now. A trip in its system is basically defined as of a movement of vehicle from point A to point B. Once they arrive at point B and there's inactivity of the vehicle or it's stopped, whether with the ignition on or off after 20 minutes, that concludes the trip. Once the vehicle proceeds to move again, it will start a new trip. So that's why you can have a trip with a very short distance, say 1 kilometer, 0.5 kilometers, or a trip with an extensive amount of distance like 150, 200 kilometers for 2 hours, 3 hours. But it doesn't matter, all the information is still captured. Generally, a trip in a system is displayed in two ways. The one I have on screen right now is the map visual. So this basically indicates the actual route driven by the vehicle. As you can see, it's illustrated the starting of the trip, the exact location or route that it took, and then the point of the trip. So primarily along the trip route, the trip's information, or the visual trip, the visual trip, it would actually indicate a couple of icons along its route, and as you can see here, there are some green icons and some orange icons, and there's some red icons as well too. So these are the main indicators. For instance, the starting of the trip is indicated by a green balloon. As you can see here, and everything's color coded to match whatever's been said on the map. Then the green arrows are all reporting points along the route of the trip, so it actually gives you information as well too. Once you click upon the green arrows, it indicates the vehicle, the speed it was going at, the date and time of the report, the GPS coordinates. Again, if it was a reference location, you'll actually see the name here, or GPS coordinates, the distance, is odometer, the virtual odometer for the vehicle, ignition status as well too. Right, and as you can see here, what says green arrow indicates reporting point. A trip contains data such as speed, time, date and position, report, GPS coordinates, or point of interest. If it's stop idle, you would actually see an icon just similar to this orange diamond, and basically it indicates ignition on and the ignition off stops. For the conclusion of the trip, you will actually see a green icon or balloon icon, I like to refer it as, and it indicates the conclusion of the trip. As you can see here in this particular instance, again, going back to the map, you have the starting point of the trip, you have the green reporting arrows, you have some stop conditions here, added conditions, vehicle proceeded, and then there's an ending point here. So it's pretty simple to understand. Okay, right. So just going through this. These are all reporting points again. Reporting points, idle condition or ignition on off stop during the course of the trip. Then you have the conclusion of the trip. Right. Let me just bring this down. So to view a particular trip, I'm just going to use this vehicle here right now, GH6774. To view the trips for the last 24 hours, I just simply click on the vehicle's name. Once I click on it, the trips within the last 24 hours is actually loaded up on this pop-up screen. Of course, there's a filter here that you can actually use to see just trips for today, last 24 hours, last 12 hours, last 2 hours. I'm just going to keep it at 24 hours. The most recent trip is listed at the top of the screen, and the older trip, or the first trip within the last 24 hours, is actually listed at the bottom. Now, there are cases where you may see trip distances. A trip is recorded, but the distance is very minute, as in this case is 0.03 kilometers. This is just based on the sensitivity of the GPS at some point in time. It was in the air, they had some movement, they had a little bit of activity. That's why the accelerometers detected some movement, some obstruction, and reported trip's information. But not to worry. Your first real trip actually started at 1:50 on the 17th, which was yesterday, concluded 14:52. The GPS coordinates for which the trip started, it was a reference location. You're actually seeing the name here. The concluding time is 14:52. Again, the same thing with the GPS coordinates here. The distance of this particular trip would have been 25.86 kilometers in terms of distance, and then the duration in terms of time would be an hour and 1 minute. Now, to get a visual of this trip, you just simply by clicking on the trip, a visual is loaded up. So you have an actual map routing showing us again the starting point of this trip. As you can see, it started here with a green balloon, and then these are all reporting points. The arrows, idle condition, arrows indicating the direction of travel. As you can see, it came all the way to Buccleuch Highway, went on to the Oga Highway, went straight over the Harbour Bridge, and then it was here. It arrived to this concluding location. This is the last point, somewhere in the Lagrange area here. As you can see, the green arrow. Now, this is just a map visual. To get an actual listing, a detailed listing of all these reporting points, just by simply clicking on this green eye, actually does that as well. So you get a routing again on the map, the visual in terms of the map, and then you have reporting points for this particular trip. Now, the most recent trip data for this trip is presented at the top of the chart or table, and if you scroll to the bottom, it indicates the starting point of the trip. So this particular instance, the trip started at 13:50. GPS coordinates again, it would have indicated whether it was a reference location or not, and the GPS coordinates, the speed, ignition status, GSM status, and battery voltage at the time. Just by simply clicking on this particular point, it shows out here this is the starting point of the trip, right? And then the next reporting point was at 13:51:58. You click on it, and it shows you exactly on the map how it translates to its positioning. So this is just a very detailed listed format again with the time, GPS coordinates, speed. Now there are two types of stops that the vehicle can encounter along a trip. In this particular instance, it is an idle stop, which means the vehicle stops stationary with ignition running, or you can have a case where the vehicle is stopped with ignition off. Obviously, ignition status with the ignition off condition, this would actually change to black in a lock condition. Now to get a quick synopsis or a quick idea in terms of the duration of the stop at this particular instance, you can see here it stopped idle at 13:54, and then again it started moving, as you can see the green arrows, at 13:56. So it just gives you just about a minute and a half approximately this duration of the stop. Obviously it was at a traffic light, so it was just a traffic stop. I proceeded along this route. You can actually see the reporting points. Some cases you will see this in red. Not to worry. It's just that how the mapping system is referenced to reflect the national speed limits, which is inaccurate at this time. Nothing on our behalf. Basically just the mapping system. Alright, so again you're moving along, and then you can see the vehicle arrived. We had an idle condition here again at 14:30. You can see it stop here for 2 minutes, started moving again at that point. Now it arrived to this location. You can see at 14:37, then at 14:38 there's a stop. Just by simply clicking it indicates exactly where this idle condition is occurring, and you can see here that it started moving again at 14:48. Okay, so the distance, the time between the idle condition to the movement again is approximately 10 minutes. So this was actually approximately 10-minute stop. Alright, and there we go. The concluding part of the trip is at 14:52. As you can see here, it's concluded. So again, the most recent data for the trip is listed at the top. The older data or the start of the trip is listed at the bottom of the chart table. Then clicking on the charts tab, it would actually indicate the time spent in the speed bands. Like this particular vehicle, it spent 8 minutes between 60 to 79 kilometers per hour, and then 7 minutes 40 to 59 kilometers per hour. 11 minutes spent between 20 to 39, and 20 minutes between 0 to 19 kilometers, 0 to 20 kilometers, sorry, at a time of 60 minutes. Then you have a graph of the speed profile you can see here clearly. The green is actually the reporting points. The green is where you're concerned about, not the red. And then you have the trip activity over time. Green obviously indicates the transit time. Orange indicates the stop time during the course of the trip. And there's another chart as well to indicate the same. You have the external battery voltage, and then you have this GSM signal strength as well. Driver behavior, we're not using details. Driver behavior basically indicates in some instances the devices are configured to report harsh acceleration, harsh braking, harsh turning. And this is most suited for smaller vehicles like pickups and cars. You will actually see these occurrences as well. In the table section as well too, if you know these icons here, when there's an occurrence you would actually see them listed in this section here. In the sensor section, you would actually see it wherever they occur. You would actually see it here, so you can notice a particular point just by simply clicking it. Or this is where we had a harsh braking scenario. So it's pretty straightforward in that regards. Again, this is trip 4. So the trip concluded 14:52. At this particular location here, where the trip concluded, it would have spent 47 minutes before a new trip started at 15:39 and concluded at 16:35. Again, at a reference location, GPS coordinates. This distance would have been 26.21 kilometers for approximately 56 minutes. Again, just by simply clicking on this trip, it loads its visual on the map. It shows the starting as a green arrow here again, as he routed along the Damara Harbour Bridge, came down back Ogle Highway, all the way up the East Coast, onto the railway embankment, and then back to this location to conclude the trip. Again, just by simply clicking on the eye, the chart data or the trips data is presented. The concluding part of the trip is listed at 16:35. You can see ignition is turned off at this time here, and the starting point of the trip is listed at the bottom of 15:39. Again, by simply clicking this, it gives you information in relation to that. That'd be the data, stop conditions. Stop conditions again, as you can see here, stop here probably like for 2 minutes, approximately 2 minutes or just under. Then there's another condition here, stop like for 2 minutes again, right, until it concluded this trip. Again, you have the chart data, the speed time means. Speed time means. Alright, so it would have concluded trip at 14:35. Then there wasn't any movement here. This was short distance. Then the following trip would have been at trip 7-8 on the 18th. It started on 9:29 this morning. 10:45 is still ongoing. Obviously, it's a trip. 35 kilometers duration in terms of distance, on 59 minutes. Clicking on it again, loads up into the system. You can see it here as well. Moving along, clicking the eye, you get all the trips information data. At any point in time, you can see just by simply clicking on it, it gives you information in relation to all the reporting points around the trip. Alright, so again, just simply putting it, you have the starting time of the trip, ending time of the trip. Duration spent at the last location where the trip concluded, starting time of the trip, ending time of the trip again, then the distance in terms of duration for the trip, and timing. So I'm just going to close this out. In the third part of the training, I'll explain to you how to review historical data for greater than 24 hours. Again, this is a vehicle listing indicated by its current status, registration number, make, model. Again, you can see that these are all in idle conditions. These are all in stop with ignition off conditions. And again, if you want to simply locate a vehicle, you just navigate to the vehicle and click on it, and it appears on the screen for you.